Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Windbreakers podcast. I'm Yahtzee Croshaw. Frost is above me, like he usually is.
Yep, I'm the number one upstairs neighbor.
And Marty is above and to the right of me, like he usually is.
Wagga wagga.
I have to point out to and
It's
look.
very hard when I try to do that
sure.
on shows. It's so hard. My brain is broken when I'm looking at these overlays.
But anyway, this week we're talking about lore in the aftermath of the Elden Ring DLC. Of course, lore being a big part of the From Software interactive narrative presentation, but also inspired somewhat by the response to my coverage of the Riven remake in Yahtzee Tries recently, where we got a whole lot of very angry commenters saying, well, it makes sense if you read the books. which of course drives the question, how has video games got a lore problem? Has culture generally got a lore problem? But is there not enough of a story being told in the, what would you call it, the front-facing part?
Yeah, the cortex. I guess first off, do we want to try to define like lore versus story?
Let's go there.
Set a nice little baseline.
I like it.
Well, I suppose lore would just be everything that explains the world that isn't directly told in the moment-to-moment experience of playing the game or watching the movie, like stuff you pick up on from reading associated tie-in books or reading the item descriptions in Dark Souls.
Okay, I was gonna say, so like that we're considering that lore as well, like documents, audio logs, sort of things that are not necessary to experience while actually playing and or watching a thing.
Right, because of course random documents and audio logs is a big presence in a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose I have played a lot of games where the story doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you don't pay attention to all of that.
Yeah, no, that's where I'm in. It's very much a feeling kind of thing. Like you can go through my small town and they'll go, here's the Confederate statue during this year, during that kind of thing. Very well documented. That's history, that's narrative. But also the town has a little bit of gossip of like, yeah, that's where the gym teacher and the English teacher had an affair. That's lore.
That's
I know it when I see it. I know it when I hear it.
Yeah, it adds. It adds flavor. Yeah, lore to bring up food, which I feel like we do a lot. Like lore feels like the flavor of something, so that's the spice, the seasoning. Whereas the story is the protein. Like that is the main course, and like a lore can enhance a protein, but I don't feel like lore can make up for a lack of protein.
Lore certainly can enhance the protein. I'm thinking about a game I very recently played, Still Wakes the Deep.
Right.
Which is Chinese Room's new walking simulator thing. On the surface, it's like a horror sci-fi story where you're trying to escape from an oil rig where everyone's been everyone's been John Carpenter's The Thinged. But early on, there's a prologue where you just hang around the oil rig, meeting everyone, seeing how they do their daily life. And if you go into like the staff lounge, there's just a poster on the wall illustrating who's the standings in the darts tournament. And that's just one of many little touches that really makes that game feel like it has a believable world, and where every body you find has impact because it's someone the main character knows and has interacted with.
Yeah, I like it. Another thing is that it doesn't really impose on itself, right? It's if I were to just wander and look through and it allows my own curiosity to sort of pick and choose whatever it wants and to be as involved as I want to be outside of just, here's a history course, I never really understood that too much. And so when it gets to that lore problem, I'll probably flesh it out more. I do feel like lore that imposes, it's hard to tell the difference between like, is this lore or is this narrative now? Because it's starting to feel like an actual history lesson more so than anything else.
Yeah. Well, an example of lore that imposes would probably be something like the Star Wars opening crawl.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Interesting.
Force lore.
Yeah. But then, of course, lore is something that a lot of creators start to use as a crutch. So, like, I think of a game like Final Fantasy 13, which when I played it back in the day, I noticed pretty short ways into the game that it's got a fucking glossary. And you literally have no chance of understanding what the fuck's going on in that game unless you go to the glossary every time they mention a new word you don't understand.
Yeah, a new proper noun gets the Lucille or whatever.
And I'm thinking of Ross Scott did a video on The Division a while back, and he mentioned in that video that he was like playing that game with a sort of self-imposed challenge where he has to figure out what the story of the game is just from what's presented. and not based on listed documents or reading any supplementary material before he starts.
Sure.
And it turns out it's really bloody hard to figure out what the story of the Division is without that sort of context.
That can help.
Yeah, I know, like multiplayer game, like doesn't like Rainbow Six has lore, but
Does
it's like I think so, but you have to you really have to go off the beaten path to find it, and it's like not the primary goal of the thing. The I don't know. I always feel weird about a bulk like really good story stuff being delivered in these things you need to stop and read, because I feel like that can do such a bad job of mucking up the pacing of a game.
Yeah.
Like when you leave that to the player, then they kind of take the agency in terms of, oh, okay, if you were ramping up dramatic action right now, I could hit pause and spend 10 minutes reading the documents I got over the last hour.
Oh, I hate when games force you to stop to listen to documents. I've done entire videos on the subject. Just play the audio log over gameplay while I take care of everything else I'm supposed to be doing.
I think that's what separates it there. Because the reflex to that is like, yeah, but you might miss it. Lore, it's okay if you miss it. It's okay if you might miss it. Whereas narrative is like, no, I have to. I really do have to tell you this.
Just to give like a hardline hot take here, I think lore is a lovely thing, but I think a story has to be a self-contained story without it. I think of it in the same way I think of leaving stuff for the sequel. I mean, classic example, Star Wars A New Hope. As has been well documented, Star Wars A New Hope works perfectly well as a standalone story. If you take that Grand Moff Tarkin is the main antagonist, it's a complete hero's journey from start to finish. And everything else that the sequels pay off is stuff that's just sort of hanging off that strong core narrative to be sorted out later. And one could argue part of the problem of later Star Wars is that sequel hook becomes more the pie filling than the lovely little decorations on the crust.
Yeah, that kind of speculation cottage industry becomes a way for people to fill the room in between entries of the thing. Like I feel like it's Star Wars. I mean, for we went decades without Star Wars movies, and so that kind of like lore and speculation ended up getting filled in by games and by books and things like that.
Didn't it just? Star Wars lore, expanded universe lore. It was more lore than meat at that point.
Yeah. And I guess that almost ties into what we talked about a few weeks ago, where at a certain point something spirals so heavily out of control that you're like, what even is this thing? Being a fan of this thing, like, what does it actually mean? And that's the same of like being a fan of like a Souls game's story. Like I don't, like maybe I'm dumb, but I don't get enjoyment out of these Souls stories in the moment while playing them. I'll get like feelings of awe and excitement and fear and being impressed by what they've created, and then afterwards I need to have someone like Vati. I'll be like, okay, explain who's Mikola. Explain who this person is.
Are you hitting this bit though, where it's like I'm not sure what's going on, and then in the newer Souls games, you finally learn, and you're like, yeah, I kind of didn't need to care now, did I? Whereas in the first one, I was like, I didn't know what's going on, but when I did, I'm like, no way, that's so sad. I can't believe it. Now I'm like,
Dark Souls is a weird case because it's almost all lore. Like it almost doesn't have like a surface level narrative, or like the surface level narrative is just what you, the player, are doing. You're trying to get to the Bell of Awakening. Oh dear, there's a big monster in the way that wants to stop you. That's all you know, and that's all you really need to know to appreciate the gameplay. All that lore is for stuff is for the people who want to fill in a few blanks after they're already sucked in by the gameplay, the atmosphere, the interesting environments, and the weird background storytelling details. So I'd say it's the same principle as A New Hope. You've got your surface thing, fight the monsters and explore the world and don't die, and all the rest of it is stuff that makes the lovely pie crust around it.
Yeah, you almost can't just have the lore, now can you? As you're saying, very fulfilling, very FNAF, right? To people who weren't into the lore, the story for us was like, oh, he's a night manager and he's these haunted animatronics and whatnot. But to everyone else, it's like, no, there's death and fear and loathing.
I would have liked Dark Souls story less if it had bridged the gap and tried to have both a moment-to-moment, fully dialogued narrative as well as the lore stuff. The fact that it's all lore keeps it a nice sort of pure experience. Because if they did have like a in-your-face narrative in Dark Souls, that would be an implication that is the only stuff that's important.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. That's the stuff you need to pay attention to. The fact that all of the story is in lore means it's all equally prominent, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, and it's weird it's weird to consume that in game in FromSoft's games because they don't have that kind of like glossary that you're talking about in a Final Fantasy game, or even like Final Fantasy 16 last year had that active time lore or whatever, where you could pull up web of like, oh, here's a timeline of everything that's happening, and here's what this proper noun these characters are talking about mean, and here's how these characters are related. Whereas if you glean everything from reading the items, you can read everything over the course of a 50-hour playthrough, but that doesn't mean you're going to make a connection of a proper noun from an item you found in the first hour to a proper noun you found 2 weeks later in the 50th hour. So that's kind of why with these stories, if we want to call them that, I need someone to kind of consume them and then, you know, convey the information to me like a teacher would, like a professor would. Like that's how I learn about my history. Yeah.
But do you need an NPC in there that you're at the 50th hour, you find the necklace and the NPC's like, remember that bastard you first met? That was him.
I'd be like, oh shit. Oh, I actually don't remember that, but thank you for telling me.
No, flashback sequence.
Yeah.
QTE.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, like Yahtzee said, I wouldn't want that. I feel like that would remove an elegance of the game, but it's a weird way to consume things.
It's almost a skill diff, if I may, add more spice to this hot take, where lore is almost just by nature reading between the lines. It is just context clues, figuring out what to do, and the people who do click together, well, they're more smug about it, but they are enriched. You know, they were paying more attention. Good for them.
How would you feel if Dark Soul had a quiz at the end? There was like, let's see how much you were paying attention.
This is that bit from Dara O'Brien in it.
Yeah,
I would fail so miserably. I think at the end of a playthrough, if someone asked me like what this DLC is about, I'm like, I don't know. Everyone seems bad, and everyone seems bad. If the health bar comes out, I kill it.
Yeah,
I did this in one of my adventure games once. In my adventure game, 5 Days a Stranger, it's a story where where there's a sort of underlying mystery. There's a ghost. You have to figure out who the ghost is and why they're mad. And there's like clues dropped throughout the story. But then at the end of the story, there's like a dialogue tree where another character quizzes you on what's actually going on. And if you get it right, the character goes, yes, that was my conclusion as well. But if you get it wrong, the character goes, no, you haven't quite understood this, so I need to explain it better.
That's funny.
That's sort of my slightly finicky, paranoid implementation of making sure everyone's on board with what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's a good way to almost like have like a quick checkup and be like, are we all good? Like, is everyone good to keep going on? Like, we're all on the same page here?
I imagine, though. I mean, you have to be careful with that, like, load-bearing lore, right? I mean, for this one, I got a little lost during the Elden Ring DLC where I went, wait, I think I'm ahead. I got here early, you know? And that's just kind of a consequence of the open world design. I was like, well, where's the fuck I have to kill right now?
I had there's an NPC, I think her name's Lena or something, that you talk to right before you enter the egg to enter the DLC.
Yeah.
And either she didn't appear in my game or I completely glossed over her because I went several hours without meeting her and characters kept referring to her. And then when I went to play the DLC with Jack, literally the first thing Jack does is talk to her before entering the egg. And I'm like, who is this woman? She was not by my egg. It's like, urban, okay, this puts some things together.
It's that urban camouflage. That's how you get in there.
So we're, the soul stuff can, aside from, other people being able to kind of digest it for us, the lore is at least within things in the game. So you brought up Riven. Like a lot of that lore is you literally need to read novels that are sold at bookstores. Probably not bookstores anymore because they don't exist. But like, it's almost like Halo did the same thing, where it's like, in order to understand the Halo story, you need to read these books that are in between. Or even Final Fantasy VII recently was like, in order to understand this remake story completely, you need to play a bunch of old games and read a couple books, and here's a movie as well.
Yeah, I was completely lost playing Halo. But, devil's advocate, surely, all that really matters to most people playing Halo is that you shoot the gribbly monsters. Mm-hmm. And again, the lore is for people who actually, give that much of a shit. That's how it feels like Halo treats it. Did you ever read the book version of 2001: A Space Odyssey?
No.
I have. Yes, I read it after I'd seen the film, and it actually fully explains what's going on in the film in plain, non-flowery English, so that everything's laid bare and it's all perfectly clear. But you know what? That didn't make me appreciate the film less.
Yeah.
Because the film is more an cinematographic experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's like I was saying before we started, I've been watching clips of Better Call Saul on YouTube just because I like the experience of watching the performances, and I don't really care about context.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There's in films and games, there's the moment-to-moment experience, which I've always held up as tantamount, especially in game design. And so, in many ways, lore. Oh, I kind of forgot where that thought was going.
Under Joe Biden.
Like Joe Biden. I mean, so if the moment-to-moment experience is what is most important to you, then I mean, is the lore like set dressing? Like, does it even
lore? Well, it's like I said about Still Wakes the Deep. Lore enhances the moment-to-moment experience because I wouldn't give shit one about a random corpse unless it had been established in earlier lore-giving opportunities who that corpse was and who they were to the main character.
Yeah.
So that's what lore can do for me. It can give more context to what you're doing on the moment-to-moment experience, but you got to have the strong moment-to-moment experience to pay it off.
Yeah, and if that ends up being like the crutch where you're like, this thing didn't click with me, I didn't like it, and someone's response is, oh, well, that's because you didn't play these 5 other games and read these books. You're like, well, this thing is not standing up on its own weight then, right? Like this thing is not, this thing's being propped up by this Jenga tower of previous games and movies and books and everything.
You've aptly described the Call of Duty zombies, how it went from lore to then way more fleshed out campaigns to where it started off great in that sense of what Yahtzee was saying, how in its own thing, even if you weren't attached to the lore, it's just 4 super soldiers fighting off zombies in a theater, right? Mm-hmm. But you go further in, it's like, oh, he's the one that put them here and their experiments and blah, 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 until eventually it started to take on a life of its own. So I was almost like leaning towards, from a development standpoint, not so much a crutch, but is it like, here's the rough draft of what I want to make. At some point, should they have discarded it? Should they have committed straight to it? Because I feel like some do try to kind of get away from it.
I think part of the reason why I like to see more original IPs and less sequels is because when something just goes on forever, it gets lost in the lore,
Yeah, lore of its own.
Especially something like Star Wars, especially something like Assassin's Creed, where more and more the stories fall back on the existing lore as a crutch without having a strong central narrative in each individual installment, because they get the impression that that's what the established fans want,
right?
To pay off the lore.
Can you though? Can you pay off the lore? Because then it's not lore anymore. Then it is part of the narrative. It's almost like lore has to be just open-ended and hanging, right? But we are obsessed with knowing more context and more context. So either you end up with a massive string of lore, or just, well, now it's not lore. It's just given.
Yeah, I mean, it can be handled in different ways, right? Like Kingdom Hearts is something to where it is incomprehensible at this deep in unless you've consumed everything there is to consume. And so I do feel like it is kind of it knows its audience, and it's not just it's Final Fantasy characters meets Disney characters like the original pitch. It is very targeted towards its core audience, whereas I would say the Remedy games do a pretty good job of they've created this tethered universe, but I think you can play Control or Alan Wake separately and enjoy them for what they are. And then if you played the other ones, it's a little bit of like a bonus that you see the threads that link them together.
See, that's how I like to do things, because I myself am a creator of fiction in my off hours. And I've always said that I like including little references to other things I've done to sort of imply that it's all tied into a single universe. But I've always tried to make sure that everything's a self-contained story, because it might be the current audience's first experience with what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels like good advice for a story creator. Just make sure that you can onboard a new audience with every installment. And, you know, it's a little infuriating when things continue to make money, even when they're completely impenetrable. Like I've said before, I haven't watched a Marvel movie since like Guardians of the Galaxy 1, and now I don't want to because there's been so many. There's so much deep lore. I haven't seen anything since before Spider-Man showed up.
And it's not even just movies anymmore. It's like, oh, there's also this 8 hours of this Disney Plus show you have to watch, and it's like a little full-time job. And when the thing's at the top of the world, that's a benefit. Like that was a feature, not a bug, when they started tying everything together, because they're like, oh, you're in our web, you know, no pun intended. Like you're gonna watch everything. But as quality and interest started to wane, they're now being like, oh shit, we kind of want to back away and let people know, like, oh well, no, you could just watch this. You could watch Captain America 4 without watching anything else. It's fine. You can watch Deadpool without watching anything else. It's fine.
Yeah,
I feel like the point.
One,
okay, go ahead. I was going to be cynical, but
someone else will fall on that
There's
sword.
enough cynicism to go around.
I call dibs on the cynical stick.
Okay, you'd be the cynicism warm-up man.
Oh yeah.
And then
is that FOMO? Is that literary FOMO? You think? Where it's just like, you didn't get that, you didn't really get the whole context. Why don't you have a look at the book, have a look at the other games, which kind of has the other effect of, like you said, Kingdom Hearts. I'm scared because I don't know. I'm pretty sure I can't just grab the next one, and I'm all caught up.
So you're saying it's not so much lore as cross promotion.
Yes, yeah. Whereas before, back in my day, it would just be as simple as like, yeah, I know him from this other IP. We go to the same gas station. That's it. Whereas now they have to live in each other's stuff, and the world that they're in is part of the promotional thing too. I'm like, oh no.
I feel like the point where you do your big Avengers crossover and where all the laws of the individual works come together and all hang out together, surely that's like the natural end point for the franchise. Because anything you do after that is just going to feel like it's like turning the same handle.
Right.
It also feels like we've talked about how, like, if you keep trying to like build to something bigger and bigger, once you hit like multiverses, it's like multiverses, but like a multiverse, then it's like, well, can't really go anywhere from here because you've you've touched the infinite, and that's the top of this Cold War.
That's not going to stop us though. Did you hear Vin Diesel where he's like, maybe we'd do a spin-off of the Torettos? I'm like, my brother in Christ, you're the main character. You are the Torettos. You're doing it right now. What are you spinning off to?
Yeah, they tried to do that with Hobbs and Shaw, and it's it's something. I don't know, it almost feels like at a certain point it's like a threat. Like these things become so big that it's not even FOMO. It's like, well, you better fucking watch it. You're gonna get left behind, and you're like, well, if it's the biggest thing in pop culture, then you feel bad. But once it starts waning, like everything ends up doing, like you're fine being left behind.
Is that so much a threat now that we're past like the world of water cooler conversations, and there's simply so much popular media that you can't really have those water cooler conversations about individual works anymore. Everyone's in their own little like bubble of pop culture.
What seems like the biggest thing in the world to your bubble, you can look at the ratings and be like, oh, Succession got a fraction of the rating. The Succession finale gets a fraction of the ratings of like whatever shitty CBS procedural is on a Tuesday night.
Suits is great. So, you watch yourself.
So it just seems like it's just like in your bubble, it's the most important thing in the world. But there's a million bubbles out there. So
the problem with FOMO is it's the threat of the stick that's going to get you if you get left behind. I think the threat's actually been acted upon. The thing that breaks FOMO is you did miss out, and then you're like, oh, I'm alive. It's not that bad. So now it emboldens them to like, you know what? I missed out once, and I didn't hurt from it. So I'm going to miss out some more. And you know what? I kind of like missing out on things. What else can I miss out on? You know?
Vaccinate yourself. These days, there's more cachet in making obscure references, I think.
I think so too. Yeah.
I mean, before we started recording, you two were all talking about The Bear together. And you were like, "Hey, did you watch that? Oh my god, that was great! Yeah, blah blah blah. Did you see that bit where he blah blah blah?" And I was feeling left out.
Yeah, we're a little lukewarm on this season, but yes, but
I was feeling left out. But my thought while you were doing that was not, "Boy, I better go off and watch The Bear now." My thought was, "Boy, I wish these two fucks would shut up."
Yeah, there you go.
Listen out, yes, chef. What about games where like parsing the lore is the game? And I realize like, some of my favorite games of the last few years.
Yeah, I was about to say Obra Dinn, basically every detective game.
Obra Dinn, Outer Wilds, and Immortality. 3 of my favorite games of like the last 5 or 6 years are all about like parsing through the lore.
Well, there you go. Much like Dark Souls, it's an all lore experience. It's all lore. That's what you want.
Delicious. That's not bad. Yeah.
I'm thinking about Still Wakes the Deep again. I mean, I always like give video games like Hellblade 2 and that game shit for trying to bridge the gap between walking sim and actual game by having these token combat elements or these token stealth elements. And it feels like, stay in your lane. If you want to make a visual novel, fine. I've liked visual novels. I like Beginner's Guide. I like Stanley's Parable. I like things that owned the fact that they're visual novels. But it's the shilly-shallying where things all get undignified and you're just giving a worse experience for everyone. And that's how this feels like with lore. Either oops all lore or tell us a straight story that doesn't strictly require it. Yeah. It's when you're trying to bridge the gap that everything starts to go to shit.
There is a combo somewhere. As one of your critiques, I loved the phrasing. I forgot what it was, but I know that I loved it. Was for Hellblade 2. It was like you said the first game had clear ambiguity. I think that's
clearer ambiguity. Yeah,
that oxymoron, but it did hit a nice range, a nice temperature that I did appreciate. And I feel at some point lore does that, where I was like, you feel it was more ambiguous before, but also clear that it was ambiguous. Now I'm like, I'm not sure what's going on here, really.
Yeah, I was like, wait, all these other characters can see what we're seeing and know that we are actually fighting giants.
Yeah, it's very much like the magic tricks. For some, the fun is in knowing, and for others, I like to just kind of not having a concrete answer is as much fun as having a solid one.
They opened the mystery box. You can't go back from opening the mystery box. The toothpaste won't go back into the mystery tube.
Sure, you can. You can just buy the
mystery tube. I don't want to put the mystery tube on my teeth. Seems like a bad place to put it.
No. Absolutely not. No. From
it makes your teeth white, but it's kind of weirdly so.
Your fillings hurt anytime you walk by.
Yeah, it's just like fluorescent in that way.
You know that bit in Memoirs of an Invisible Man where he puts makeup on his teeth so he can pass as normal, but it looks really weird when he smiles because it's just like pure white.
Yeah,
I don't remember that. No,
I like that. That's great.
I think I own it too. I don't know. Is this just running its course, though, you think? I think it'll course correct. Where we go from, ooh, I love lore. I love a little bit of mystery, but everything's lore and ambiguous. I'd like some concrete answers. So I think this is like the growing out phase. We're going to start getting into clearer stories. And then we're just going to go back to lore again. But because the problem with proper stories is we're getting to that end of like just stack on lore on the ends of it. To like there's no clear answer, but it's been dragging on for way, way, way too long. Do you really need to know where Han Solo got his last name from?
Yeah, that shit was very dumb.
From his mum, I assume.
No, it's because he passed through a security checkpoint and he was alone. And so they said Han, Solo.
I'm reminded of that bit in, I think it was Tomb Raider 4, where at the start they have a little prologue where Lara's like still young and still being trained by her mentor, and there's a bit where they establish the backstory of her backpack, of her iconic, weirdly small backpack she's been wearing since the first game.
I wonder if
she found it in an archaeological dig somewhere.
I think every one of these lore-based, or any dip into lore can have that one thing you point to and you're like, you went too far there. Even Lost, my favorite TV show of all time. When it kind of got lost in the sauce, one of the flashbacks was about how the main character got his tattoos, and everyone's like, "We don't give a shit about this. Like, why do we care how he got his tattoos?" Like,
you know where it gets lost in the sauce, where you have a moment like in the second Star Trek film, the Star Trek remake film, where they introduce like Benedict Cumberbatch's character and say, "Oh, actually, he's Khan," and the film goes, "Woo!" But the characters shouldn't know who that is.
Yeah.
That shouldn't mean anything to Captain Kirk. It's like, okay, we've both got 4-letter names that start with K. What's your point?
Yeah. I mean, my favorite bit, I would think it was Spock, where he says, one of my ancestors said that the simplest solution is always the right. It's alluding to his ancestor being Sherlock. I was like, ooh. I get that. What do you call that? Is that lore? I'm not really sure what that is. To me, that feels like lore, but it's its own brand of something else. Yeah. Where Spock is related to Sherlock Holmes in that sense, which is I mean, you almost have to really be in on it. But who's that for? People who like Sherlock Holmes and Star Trek.
I guess there's like people get a
Easter egg. They say Easter egg. Is that it?
Star Trek Next Generation reference Sherlock Holmes all the time. Fucking Professor Moriarty was a recurring character.
There you go.
From like Moriarty from what a lot of the character in Star Trek.
What a lot of people don't realize about Star Trek Next Generation is that at heart it's a procedural. You're watching these guys at work. They're going through the process. Yeah. They're going through like the company process every time they get into something, and that's what like latter day Star Trek doesn't understand. They try to turn it into fucking action movies again.
I realize I just don't know anything about Star Trek. So every time I learn something, I'm like, "Oh, this isn't what I thought Star Trek was."
Thought you watched it all.
Star Trek? No, I haven't watched any of it.
X-Files.
I don't know anything about Star Trek. You might be thinking of Jack and Darren.
No, you binged the X-Files is what that was.
Binged the X-Files. I know everything about the X-Files, except everything I didn't understand because I was playing a Switch game at the time. But aside from that,
that'll do.
I know everything about X-Files.
Oh, is that a final Unity, Eric?
What's the
Star Trek Next Generation text adventure, the final Unity?
That's that's one from the 90s.
Yeah, it's an old one. I remember playing it on CD-ROM, so
I want to say
old.
That here's your lore. That is what inspired roguelikes. Is Michael Toy, I believe, was playing this, but it's all he had, and he's like, I want a different adventure every time, so he came up with the concept of a roguelike. This and Cave.
Nice.
What time do you left?
How's you go? Is there a well, we're not going to bully games, so to speak, but is there a game you feel has lost its way to the lore? You think gone a little too far?
Assassin's Creed, absolutely.
Well, it's kind of turned into a historical procedural now.
Yeah, I feel like Assassin's Creed ebbs and flows with its own history of like we think it's important, and then it's like, well, we don't actually care about this.
Yeah, but every individual plot kind of feels like the same now. It's just, hey, you're an assassin, you fighting the big oppressive Templars who are baddies. At the end, you go into an alien spaceship and have a revelation, and then you come out and do the side quests. That's every Assassin's Creed game.
But they actually have story now, don't they? I stopped. Games? I have not played the new ones. I stopped.
I mean, how much do they reference the meta story? Like I don't know, like Valhalla and Odyssey recently. Like how much did they?
Well, they were still doing the future narrative in the last couple of ones. I still had like still referencing Desmond Miles here and there.
I wonder if this that series, what it would be like if from the beginning they just would have been like, there is no future narrative. We're just going to make a series, and it's just going to have a bunch of different. It's going to be Knights vs. Templar and a bunch of different time periods.
It was just supposed to be 3.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, again, sort of a natural end point after 3 when like the main character had fucking died.
Yeah.
That was probably. I mean, the fact that they kept going after that is what led to the fucking lore mill.
It's
that's
more
not going to stop them from continuing a series that makes them hundreds of millions of dollars.
You can feel that, can't you? To where it's like, this is where it naturally was going to keep going, but now we're lore churning. That's where we're going to go.
Lore churning,
but which is I think a different thing compared to say like indies or smaller than AAA. Dead by Daylight kind of had this issue where they started off with a lot of lore, and at one point they're like, I think we're here to stay, and we have a higher budget. Let's actually put a story on it. It's just it conflicts a little bit with the original lore, but I feel it was well intended.
Are there any like aspiring story writers in the chat? it's very tempting to get sort of bogged down establishing the lore for whatever you're trying to create. Just like spending hours like working out timelines and character backgrounds and all of that. And I'm telling you right now, no one's going to give a shit if your story on the surface isn't fun. So don't worry about that. Just have a vague idea in your head, put the characters in the situation, write about what happens, and then at the end, if people get interested, maybe sort of fill in some blanks after the fact. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're making the mistake the fucking Dark Universe made, starting with the lore, and then assuming
that photo of everyone.
Assuming if the first film did well enough, then they could make the other 17 they had planned. No, you start with Star Wars: A New Hope. You start with Iron Man. You start with Ghostbusters, Back to the Future. You make one solid, self-contained story, and then if that works out, lore away.
I agree.
Okay, is that a firm enough point to end on so we can go to Super Chats? Do you think?
Let's go.
I think that was beautiful. I have a tear in my eye. Allergies, but still a tear.
Man, Back to the Future is so good. We should appreciate Back to the Future more.
What do you feel about Future 2?
That was the one I've watched the most. We had that on VHS growing up. We didn't have like the first one or the third one. So I've watched Back to the Future like a million times.
Didn't understand there were two more, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine.
After I'd like watched all three of them like enough times, I realized that the plot of Back to the Future 3 is basically just the plot of Back to the Future 1 again, but in Wild West times.
But with
like beat for beat.
Yeah.
But Back to the Future 2, it's all over the place. It goes to the future, it goes to the past, it goes to an alternative past, it goes to alternative present.
Oh, yeah.
Great. It's a rollicking roller coaster of a film.
And then it ends with the classic, I've been holding on to this package for years for you. I'm like, yeah. First time I saw that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I was like, whoa, what do you mean?
And props to Robert Zemeckis for sitting on any attempt to remake it.
Yeah, he's too busy making a bunch of bad movies over the last
Just immediately putting his fist down on any attempt to remake it. No, it's perfect.
Yeah. I'll take it.
Okay. Alex Armstrong gives $2 says, you want to talk about lore problems, Zelda Timeline? Well,
those get past, you think? Like Zelda and Dark Souls, where entropy and all this is kind of part of it, alternate dimensions, universes.
Yeah. It's just, as I say, Zelda games are fine as individual experiences, so who cares?
And the timeline, to me, the Zelda timeline is so unimportant and so easy to just ignore. Like Yahtzee said, if you kind of just play them as individual experiences or be like, oh, these two were back to back, so I'll see, oh, this is young Link after Ocarina of Time going on a little adventure and he gets all Majora's masked. And so, that overall story to me is like, that's cool for the 5% of people who like going crazy about it. I'm perfectly fine not.
Having said that, cool things do tend to happen when there is a continuity from one Zelda game to another. That's how we got Majora's Mask. I was like, okay, we got through the usual shit, saved Princess from Ganon. Now we can start having some fun with this particular timeline.
Yeah, and there've been great moments like going under the sea and Wind Waker and seeing the Ocarina of Time castle. And I think there's less timeline stuff, and there's more they could do powerful things with motifs by delivering like old parts of iconic scores to you. When you hear music in certain places, you're like, oh, holy shit, like this is evoking Ocarina of Time. The last boss of Dark Souls 3, when you fight the Lord of Cinder, like when he goes full Gwyn and you start hearing Gwyn's song and you're like, oh shit, like the music is the lore cue to you in a really cool way.
Like that fist fight with
Snake and Ocelot?
Yeah, Snake and Ocelot at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4.
God, it's so good.
Where the soundtrack for Metal Gear Solid 3 kicks in and the
even
names
the
on
UI
the health
changes
bars.
with each game.
Names on the health bars change.
Perfect game. Kojima, you're great. You can do as much lore as you want.
I like that. Yeah. Now, my headcanon is Legend of Zelda is literally you're just being told a legend and it's being passed down and it's showing itself in a way. It's reflecting our modern times, how we have progressed with technology. Yeah.
There you go.
It's all right.
Where was I? About I've lost my place.
Right,
here we go.
What do you mean?
Alex Armstrong. No, Denmark.
Yeah.
Denmark gives $10 and says, despite older games smoking the lore bong, I think FNAF was the one with both interesting background stuff and an existence coinciding with internet culture. That's patient zero right there.
That second part,
You know,
I think, is key, the internet culture.
I think we're going to have to get someone much younger on to explain the appeal
What do you
of
mean?
FNAF.
That was my generation.
Okay,
we got a little baby.
All right, all right, my little bambino. Explain the appeal of Five Nights at Freddy's lore.
I mean, I think it just hits on your basic rules. Where at the first setting, it's like it's a funny little game, where all the internet personalities are scaring each other. This is around that same time that we were taking interest in like Slender. Remember the Slender game, right? Just a little spook 'em up, stand off to your friends or whatnot. But it also was like that evolution of like, you remember when Marilyn Manson did that thing with the rib? For some reason we had these conscious rumors going through, and this is the first time where they're like, hey, there's this weird little thing in FNAF, and you go, wait, there actually is this weird little thing in FNAF, and so it's as much rumor as it is gossip as it becomes tangible as anything else. And then Matt Pat comes through with his game theory, and I genuinely think the lore was way more exciting than the actual games themselves, and that's what's kind of kept it going and whatnot. I would say, yeah, that is kind of patient zero, because it not just the game itself, the writing underneath it, which you can argue if it was just bones or a crutch or whatever, but also with the internet, because we're seeing now that more are trying to replicate that FNAF thing, and it comes off as extremely disingenuous. Of like, oh no, Matt Pat, it'd be a shame if you really picked apart my game, so vulnerable and ripe.
Are you throwing shots at the Hello Neighbor?
Yes, I am. Very much so. Where he's like, oh, there's so much juicy lore if someone would find it. And this also goes to the other thing with Souls games. I think they gave it another resurgence. I'd say the second wave of it was Dark Souls and Vadi, where it's game, creator, YouTuber, boom, cultural impact. So now you end up with so many other Souls-likes who almost wish they had a Vadi of their own, and they're not as big because, well, you don't have a Vadi. It is 1 and 2. As much as you need the lore coming through, you almost need that old kindly scholar to go, yeah, I've pieced them together.
Well, if you want to, if someone wants. Well, if anyone watching this wants to get in on the ground floor, you know what game has like hidden lore in it? Starstruck Vagabond.
I guess they're right.
You could speculate on the meaning of the giant purple egg in the center of the universe.
There you go.
What do you think's going on in that purple egg?
It was
well, come out. They'd be missing the point, because the whole point of the story of Starstruck Vagabond is that no one knows what the egg's there for, and it kind of doesn't matter.
Oh, so yeah, FNAF was 2014. Yeah, it just coincided. It was the heyday of a lot of like video gaming lore. I think we'd used it's the internet's version of urban stories, right?
Yeah.
The hook-handed man, the Bloody Mary, because they were doing this with Binding of Isaac, where they're like, what's going on here? What's the lore? And it's like, yeah, it's about suicide, and all this going through. FNAF is just the one that I guess it's because it's a lot easier. Right, to play FNAF, you just kind of sit there and have a 2-minute run through. It's easy. It's easier to study and dig deep into games that are short.
Also, horror itself is timeless, because every generation reaches an age where they're like, "Ooh, horror is the cool thing. It's the thing that was verboten, and now I can kind of sneak behind my parents' back and watch something spooky."
Yeah, there you go. We
got stuck on that for a while. Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, speaking of Zelda, notice Twilight Princess has the Sonic 06 problem in reverse, where Link and Zelda have realistic faces and everyone else looks cartoony. I assumed they were just in a Harrison Bergeron situation.
Wasn't expecting that drop. I feel like that's just kind of like, we put a lot of time into the two main characters.
Yeah, I mean,
like that kind of syndrome, right?
It's not a controversial statement to say that you want the main characters that we're going to be looking at the whole time to be fun to look at.
Yeah,
and just sort of not off-putting to look at least.
Yeah, and like Midna and Zant look good too, but they are inherently more cartoony just because they are.
Yeah, Midna's pretty hot when they turn into an actual lady at the end.
Let me tell you, I felt weird things at the end of that game.
I've been staring at your bum this whole time, hot lady. Anyway, Voytech gives $50, deep magenta super chat, no less, and says, "Morning, gents. This is to make up for missing the past few of these." Well,
Welcome back, Voytech. We missed you.
You more than made up for it there, Voytech. You beloved, lovable bear, you.
Oh, my favorite war bear.
The book The Herr der Dunkelheit gives €2 and says, "What's your second and third favorite sort of ice cream?"
Wow. Yeah, strawberry and then mango.
I would say
flavor. Or you're asking style, because then it's froyo and sorbet. I was ready.
I would say mint choc chip would be my second, because my favorite is mint cookie crunch.
Ooh,
where
so
instead of
like mint Oreo,
or instead of the chocolate chips, where that you kind of break a tooth on as you're going through the ice cream, you will have sort of soft chocolate cookie pieces in the mint chocolate, and it's a much more consistent texture.
Right.
Bought a churro flavored ice cream a couple weeks ago, and it was very good. Little brown sugar, cinnamon, caramel churro chunks in my ice cream. Excellent. Well done, ice cream makers.
I think I've had that. Cherry. Anything that blends cherry and chocolate is okay in my book.
Little cordials.
That's what I was thinking.
Except cordials.
Oh, you don't like them?
Is it because they're the natural enemy of Ferrari rockers?
Ferrari rockers.
Yeah, it's Ferrero Rochers.
Ferrari rockers.
Oh, Ferrero Rocher. Okay, yeah. Jeffrey of Monmouth gives $2. Says calling everything law is the real law problem.
Damn.
I guess we've discovered in the course of this discussion that there are multiple flavors of law.
Yeah.
Perhaps we need more differentiating terms.
Mm-hmm.
Surely. Once you know too much, it ceases to be lore. I don't know.
Ooh.
Words are a pain.
Yeah, like, is it lore to Vati, or is that just...
Well, that's his life.
The text to him.
Do you need a grand authority? Because in life, we have no god to go, yeah, that's right, that's wrong. Whereas here, the god is Miyazaki, you know?
Well, what you're talking about there is canon. And canon is not necessarily the same thing as law.
See, look at this. This is awful.
Also, FromSoft is notoriously quiet after the launch of a game about confirming anything. They kind of throw everything out there, and they're like, "Well, it's yours now. We're not going to talk about what."
It's more fun to let people speculate. As I said, if you just ruin the mystery for everyone, then it suddenly loses all its appeal.
Better to do that than like the J.K. Rowling of like, actually, Ron was Latino, Ronaldo Weasley,
and gay.
Yeah.
And also, he was in a wheelchair the whole time. I just didn't mention it.
Yep.
Because I'm that woke. Fox D gives $5. Says games with player-driven world building and persistent emergent gameplay have better lore than ones with authored stories if you're imaginative enough.
They have different stories, right? Like those are very different. Player-created stories are very different than author-created stories, in my mind.
Yeah, yes. For quite. That's like the emergent story that comes out of Arc every time you play. You know what I mean? No, I do like it when a developer has the brass to go, there is a story here. It doesn't matter what you did. There is one, like in Thief. Right? I quite enjoy that. It's open-ended. Maybe I'm the worst. Maybe Garrett in mine is the worst thief ever, but he's not. He's very well accomplished in his world. So I do like having a nice through line.
Tommy Salty gives 25 PLNs and says, lore is secondary to a good story or fun gameplay. Too many film-stroke games insist on lore. We don't need to know where Han Solo's name comes from. Love ya.
Yeah, it just depends, don't it? Like you brought up Better Call Saul. We find out where he gets the ring.
Sure, yeah.
It's all right.
I haven't seen that particular clip.
You won't get it, so it doesn't matter.
I've seen a couple of clips about his brother being really weird about electricity.
He doesn't want to go outside. The electricity is going to do weird things to him. You got to wrap yourself in one of those aluminum foil blankets.
I think I just like watching clips of Mike. I like watching very competent people at work.
Yeah, oh my God, he's the most competent.
That's good.
Blistered Soul gives £5 and says, studios incentivize lore. It stokes an active fan base and YouTube theories. Look how desperately Hello Neighbor begs for MatPat's attention on Twitter.
Yeah, that was a sad one.
No, I won't speak to this because I can't this was another rumor, I guess, that Call of Duty leaned into more of that zombie lore because so many COD YouTubers were essentially free marketing.
Sure.
So they would fill it with lore and then hand it to them first, and they would be the ones breaking it, and then it's like.
But this is like the Dark Universe thing, though. You can't front load the lore. You got to start with the fun thing that people get attached to, and then you can add the lore because of that attachment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're skipping steps there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Alex Armstrong is $5. It says, as long as games don't do the WBDC thing, where we have to watch 4 different things in order to understand the overarching franchise lore, we're cool.
Yeah. It's like Pokemon games, isn't it? Just to get all the characters. No one's going to use the system link. They're just going to buy both versions of the game.
Well, I think that stuff comes more out of Japanese culture because they have such a dense population and everyone's hanging out on public transport using their Nintendo DSs. So sort of connecting with other players in the wild is much more likely in Japan.
Never been. Is this true, Marty?
Yeah, ish.
Did you trade Pokemon when you were in Japan?
I didn't.
Black
I brought my DS at 3DS at one point and Street Passed, which was very exciting.
Yeah.
That was where you'd have like your DS in your back pocket, and if you came close to someone else with a DS, like your characters would do little swappies.
That's definitely something that came out of Japan's extremely dense population culture.
Is it wrong to want to go to Japan just to experience that specifically? Of all the things, I want to Street Pass somebody.
They also got good eats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most Michelin stars of any city.
Not once Carmi's done with Chicago.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Hawk Abridging gives $5. Says recently beat Live Alive and loved it. It had interesting lore for each scenario. What did those of you who played it think of the game overall?
I loved Live Alive. I thought it was great. Make me another one. Make me another one.
Okay.
Clown. I don't know why I called it Clown.
Yeah.
That was the one that was the Square Enix. It was an old Famicom RPG that never got ported, never got brought to America. Finally got brought on Switch. It's little short stories. It's like 7 little short stories that you play, and then they all sort of combine in the end.
That's cute.
In a really great way.
I like this.
Yeah, I think I played the demo of it, but couldn't be asked to see it through, if I'm honest. Rose Delta gives $2. Says this makes excellent white noise to bead to.
You beading out here? Oh my!
What are we beading?
He's beading.
Someone beading. Someone beading on our time.
I got a Majora's Mask bead behind me. That Nick
Look at that, dude.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Spicy.bp gives $5 and says Marty and his need to be baby birded Elden Ring's lore with Varty explaining everything. Don't worry, we all do it.
See? Varty's great.
Yeah, it's great.
And he's got such a pleasant voice to listen to.
Oh, he's got the best voice.
Very nice and calming, but
if you've just got a nice voice to listen to, then on YouTube you're halfway there.
Well, it's also George R. Martin, right? I think many people are curious to know what he's. I swear there was one YouTuber that's been parsing to go, this is Miyazaki and this is George R. Martin, and I can't look away. I don't know if any of it's actually founded on anything solid, but I just cannot look away.
Yeah, you could definitely find some. If they stole it from Berserk, it was Miyazaki, and if all the characters have names that all sound alike, then it's George R. R. Martin.
All right.
Easy peasy.
Fair enough. Zaratha, member for 5 months in tip jar. Thank you very much. Clobster Roll gives $10 and says, I found Dune hard to read. I couldn't follow the story due to what felt like constant lore information expressed through jargon.
Guess you're not a big sci-fi fan then, huh? If you don't know what the Flagimba Blotter is.
Epic sci-fi, I think, specifically.
What's the difference?
Well, epic sci-fi is Dune. Dune is epic sci-fi because it's full of lore. Whereas just plain sci-fi would be just, I don't know, Harrison Bergeron, a short story that explores a sci-fi concept.
Is it a question of scale then?
I suppose.
Okay. Like Tolkien in space, right?
Yeah, that's epic.
Okay.
Fox D gives $2 and says, player quizzing is Return of the Obra Dinn's hat.
Yeah, that is actually.
We were talking about quizzing the player.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically how you do a detective game. It's just a quiz.
I'm really curious to see what he works on next. That isn't the Cranker game.
I'm still curious to see that. Tsunami Dusha gives $20 and says nothing, but he got a like for that from someone. So you do you, Tsunami Dusha. Live your best life.
I'll give you one too. Here you go. Boom, 2.
Wow,
nice. Doran Grossman Naples gives $10. Says Dark Souls having lore in item descriptions works because it's an RPG, so you naturally spend a lot of time reading about your items. If you had to go out of your way, it would be obnoxious. I'd also argue for Dark Souls is that it's a game designed to be enjoyed as a community. Much like the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. I mean, that's what the point of all the messages on the ground and summoning players to help you in boss fights is for. You're supposed to be exchanging notes on the story, putting wikis together, and that's how you build your understanding of the story with your friends.
They also in the in the update that released in the core Elden Ring game, even like alongside the DLC, they added 2 extremely helpful quality of life things that are keeping me reading the lore of everything I pick up, which is a recent items tab. So tab that just has all the recent items you picked up, which is great, and also a little like exclamation point icon in the corner of an item if it's new and you haven't highlighted it yet. And so that is a great way to where I don't read everything as soon as I pick it up, but I'll be like, okay, I got to the next bonfire. Let's read the shit out.
Having a shit, need something to read.
Yeah, I'm having a shit. Let's read what this weird glove was all about.
It is. That's lore to me. When I say I know it when I see it, it's. Do you guys ever have those L'Oreal shampoos? On the back, they've got animal facts on them.
Oh yeah.
Narrative is the ingredients and all that nonsense. But
is that why it's called L'Oreal? Because it teaches you a little bit of animal lore.
Yeah, I assume that was the pun we were making.
No.
So what if should more games, a game like Dark Souls, should you be able to pull up your inventory on your phone and read it when you're not by the game? You can't do anything with it, but you can read the descriptions. In the same way, remember when Destiny 1 came out, its whole thing was like its story was going to be delivered via this grimoire that was like an app. That was that small window where every game had like a companion app alongside it.
The only times I dig my phone out while I'm playing a game is when a cutscene's going on that's kind of making me cringe. So I was doing that a lot playing Hellblade 2. So Hellblade 2 might have benefited from an app.
Yeah, there you go.
Reminding you that these are not real people. I'm very much keep it on the plate kind of guy. Keep it in the game for me.
It's still in the game, but you can access it.
It's on the phone. I don't even access QR codes for menus. It's just not.
I don't like that. Give me paper. Give me death.
Yeah. Why do I need to get another screen out? This is my whole question that surrounded the Wii U.
Okay. I see what you mean. Shit. You can just look up the wiki while you're on the show.
I meant when you're away from your television. Like, I'm on the bus. Yeah, I'm not pulling it up while I'm there.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. A little flavor.
Well, I read books on the bus on my Kindle app.
What if you're taking a shit on the bus and you want to know about what this Spirit Ash was all about?
This is a little shit. Not enough for a chapter.
I'll download Varty Vidya's new book, I guess.
Damn.
He's got a book? What?
Yeah, he's got a book out.
What is it?
It's about Dark Souls lore.
I should have guessed.
I don't know what I expected.
I'm not sure what I was expecting.
Tommy Salty gives 25 PLNs and says 12 minutes, Marty's favourite game, has the best lore. Just like Fast and Furious, it's about family. You could say that everything stays in the family. Do you, Tommy Salty?
Oh, you. I wasn't even on that 12-minute stream. How am I taking strays there? I don't even like that game.
You played it, didn't you?
Nobody likes it.
I don't know if anyone likes it, yeah.
Well, I liked it until I got to the ending, and then I didn't like it. And I think that's the experience most people have.
Yeah.
Zaratha gives $2 and says, a little praise for Tommy Salty's bit right there.
Damn.
Oh, well, why don't we just fucking get Tommy Salty on the podcast and he can do all the talking?
A beloved bit.
A beloved bit, yeah.
The Otaku Cat gives $5 and says, what if they added a Return of the Obra Dinn notebook mechanic to figuring out the lore to Souls games? Like you get an extra little, like do it like Curse of the Golden Idol, where you get an extra little reward if you like.
You get a flask recharge if you solve the quiz of who the fuck this boss that you're fighting is.
Imagine.
If you just fill in the blanks correctly through trial and error, then you get an extra Estus flask. Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
I don't know how I feel about this. We're getting weird. Eventually, it's gonna be like new Souls-like comes through. Watch an ad for an extra flask. Like, no, where's the line?
Beat the boss, but it's worth it.
Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, off topic, found a BPM clone for you, Yards. Robo Beat. Replace Norse with Ultra Kill-ish, cyberpunk, dual wield, choose your song list, and one weapon is ping pong. I don't know, I'm kind of getting bored of action rhythm games.
No.
I was playing that one on Yahtzee Tries that whose name I completely forget. That made me realize, these are kind of getting overdone.
So you're getting a little tired of Souls-likes and a little tired of action rhythm games. Is there a genre that you're on like the upward slope of like, ooh, give me more of these. I want more of these right now.
Eggs.
Well, I have been enjoying Nine Souls. Maybe I'm getting back on the Souls-like wagon. Who knows?
Just a different style,
Yeah. Fox D gives $5 and says, oversaturation of films, books, games, and tie-ins plays into the obsessive nature of nerd culture. People tie their identities into these franchises.
Yep. That's part of the problem.
What do you mean?
It's when it becomes like someone's like unpaid internship of.
Do you
like
think we're bad influences as a collective? It is imperative to what we do as a job that we stay in the know. Do you think others though are assuming they should too? You guys don't have to watch everything we watch and play everything we watch. You know this.
Part of that FOMO, right? If you're like engaged online, then you get into that FOMO of, oh my god, everyone's posting what they're doing at Elden Ring, and now I feel like a dunce.
I guess if everyone is just games journalists and reviewers and stuff, then you might feel that.
Well, everyone's got a YouTube channel. Everyone's on some level a game journalist.
Go to Reddit, go to Patient Gamers, talk to them. Like they're just now discovering like Witcher 3 and talking about how great it is. It's good.
Anyway, Squirtle Squad 420 gives $5. Says, back in the day, you'd read the game's manual in the back of your parents' car on the ride home. Get a heads up on what the game's world and characters.
I genuinely loved that. Yeah.
Funny, that's why rogue games have a lore problem with like them never telling you anything. It's because it used to be in the manuals, and then we went to digital, and they forgot to put it in. Okay.
Yeah. Hawker Bridging gives $5 and says, I liked how Terry Pratchett handled lore. Made Discworld feel like a living world, regardless of how strange it gets or how unnecessary it seems.
How do you do it?
Yeah, I read a lot of Discworld books. Again, the central actual surface plots were strong and self-contained, which is important. But he'd always like put footnotes at the bottom of the page when something needed explaining, and he'd tell like a little funny story attached to it. Very much like the way Douglas Adams wrote Hitchhiker's Guide. He'd just pause the story to tell a fun story from elsewhere in the universe to give context to something somebody said.
That's how Lemony Snicket
writes. And it was fun.
I feel like that's a very dangerous tightrope to walk. Like if you're someone like Pratchett or Adams, you can pull it off. If you are not, that's just going to come off as so like self-serving.
Well, it works. I guess it works because it's funny. There's like a little, funny anecdote on the side of things you can enjoy.
Yeah, I guess that's just
which
kind of
also,
like sitcoms do the same thing.
Yeah, which also builds the lore.
I like that.
The Piss Bandit gives $5 and says, I want to blame SCPs for being patient zero of the terrible lore dump epidemic when I go insane and move into the woods to become the Unigamer.
Oh no.
The Unigamer.
Ted Kaczynski.
You're not gonna become the Unibet. You already have your terrorist name. It's the Piss Bandit.
There you go.
You don't need a new name.
Who was that masked urinator?
I kind of like SCP's creepypasta. In that I like just dipping a toe in them every once in a while and being like, oh, this was a neat story, and then not really thinking about it. It's the people where it's like, this is my identity, which I guess is a danger.
Well, now SCP's a pure lore experience, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing is I think the problem is a big wave of like, we must know. A lot of people were fine with just gobbling up more Bloody Marys and more Slender and all that kind of stuff. But there is this crowd that demands to know, and they will pay good money to know. So,
yeah,
so we end up.
Yeah. If the market will pay, the market will supply.
I thought that was going to rhyme, and I was disappointed when it didn't rhyme.
No.
If the market demands it, the market remands it.
Beautiful.
You must.
I'm not sure it makes sense, but I like it.
No, don't.
If the glove don't fit, you must acquit.
Blank, member for 7 months in the Green Gang, says thoughts on Mario Brothers lore on the NES. I liked it better when Birdo was transgender.
What is the lore?
Birdo still not transgendered?
That they're brothers? What?
I think they backtracked on the transgender thing back in the day.
No, the lore is like the Mushroom Kingdom citizens got turned into Goombas and blocks, and that when you destroy a Goomba or a block, you're killing a man.
I'm getting points for it. How bad could it be?
Yeah,
that's just your body count.
Yeah,
that's what that is. All right.
Yeah.
Gives 4.99 and says hearing Yachts talk about movies makes me want him to have him on an episode of The Rewind and Darren on a Yahtzee tries, time permitting.
Should have got him on Indica.
We have our own little worlds.
What if you never see them in the same room? How do we not know they're the same person? How do we know they're not the
same?
Well,
person? I'm not Irish, and I'm much taller.
That's also true.
When you're in this room,
yeah,
you could have another room filled with comic books.
Think about it.
Where you turn Irish and
next time Yahtzee goes to a movie theater, he's welcome to come on the entertainment show.
I can't even fake a decent Irish accent.
I thought that was beautiful. That was great.
No, he sounds nothing like that.
What, Darren?
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking to my little Irish pixie voice.
Yeah, he sure is.
That's beautiful.
They don't always have to be Lucky Charms.
This is why the Irish don't like the English, Marty. Now you know. This is the lore.
This is happening.
Fox D gives $5. There's one
says, "Good God, the Irish contingency has chimed in."
When writing, ask an outsider to read it and lore up anything they say they didn't understand, only far enough to answer the question asked. If you want.
Depends.
Yeah, I don't know how.
You don't need to know everything,
Yeah.
You'll be richer
I guess it's
for
just
it.
Every note you've written, you're like, well, it's lore. Like, even if you cut something, you're like, this is lore.
Faith and Begora, Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, any Riven fans who wind about your Yahtzee tries. Oh, yes, Alex Armstrong. You should check out the comments to both these VOD of the stream and the compilation episode on Sunday, because my goodness, there were some pained bottoms after I did Riven.
Yeah,
it gets better after 17 hours and after you read the books.
Yeah, you should have done your due diligence and went to your Barnes and Nobles and got the books.
Look, I played Riven back when I liked point-and-click adventure games. I played through Myst first. I actually quite liked Myst, and then I started on Riven, and I was like, I haven't got the first fucking clue what I'm doing.
There are
only so many bits of old pipe I can fiddle with.
Hubba hubba. I always love the comments when a thing like this happens and people get mad at it, because it's the people who are like, for years they'll be like, fuck yeah, tear into that game, make fun of it, and it's like, whoa, you crossed the line. You crossed the mist line. You can't cross this line.
You thought Yahtzee would never turn the car around and do one for Riven.
Gaze not into the snark, lest the snark gaze also unto you.
You get the attention of the cynic.
Do you think that game would be any good in VR? They're like advertising how good it is in VR.
I mean, just if you like that thing in your like default VR software that just puts you in a nice room, then sure.
I mean, that sounds great.
I'm sure it puts you in some very pretty rooms.
Hell yeah.
Witticism gives $5 and says, hey Marty, played through all of Mini Shoot Adventures over a lazy Sunday yesterday. Quite enjoyed it. Thanks for the recommendation.
Oh, you're welcome. So that's you and Jack. 2 people played through.
There you go.
Great. The big 2.
And me.
Witticism and Jack. And Frost, the big 3.
Had a good look.
I liked what I played of it on stream. How good does it get?
It gets again, I don't want to be the guy that says it keeps getting better.
It's a consistent level of enjoyment.
Yeah, as it keeps folding in more kind of wrinkles. It's kind of basic in the first hour. So
wait, well, I guess a wrinkle is a good thing to fold in. Sort of a fairly natural mixed metaphor there.
No, I fucked up, or did I?
I mean, when we say fold in, we're talking about mixing cake batter, but when we say wrinkles, we're talking about another kind of fold altogether.
You can wrinkle your food.
That's classic mixed metaphors right there.
I mean, you can wrinkle in time.
We folded them together, and they were fine.
I think if you can wrinkle your food, something's gone wrong.
Oh, it's a burrito.
You wrinkle, or you wrinkle like cold cuts.
If my pancakes turn out wrinkled, then I wielded my spatula wrong. I'm sorry.
There you go.
What's a panini but a wrinkled sandwich?
Well, anyway, but we digress. Ryan Betts gives $5 and says, what terms can we use to distinguish between lore that interacts with goal-stroke actions in-game, e.g. Dark Souls, versus lore that doesn't, e.g. Overwatch?
Oh, no, that's interesting. I did like how they did it. Very separate from the whole, let's showcase some of the abilities and some of the environments, and bam, little Pixar cuts. I don't know what you would call that, but it was great. Take me back to that time. What is that? You make words yachts for a living.
There's got to be an easy way to differentiate lore that's actually in the game and lore that is entirely not in the game.
Passive, auxiliary lore.
Integrated lore. There you go.
Yeah. What's the opposite of integrated? Extegrated?
Separate.
I think it's implied that it's separate. No?
Modular, separate. Detached. Take your pick. Prize Fighter gives $5 and says, for better or worse, sizable lore allows the bringing back of fan favorite characters because why not?
What you mean?
What like Hot Pie?
What?
Everyone's favorite Game of Thrones. Everyone's favorite Game of Thrones character, Hot Pie, who kept coming back for literally no reason. Because
he was the guy who was with Arya for a while, and then he became a baker, and he worked in like a random ass tavern.
I don't remember.
Yeah, and then on 3 occasions, another character shows up randomly at his inn, and he delivers exposition to them that he just somehow has.
He baked Arya a loaf of bread in the shape of her direwolf.
Okay, nice. Yeah, those are fun.
Yes, Hot Pie was a character who'd very much become aware of the fact that he was a bit player in someone else's story, and was just sort of leaning into it at that point.
Good for him.
Yeah, I like when Game of Thrones would occasionally focus on the small folk and be like, "This is what this person's up to."
Okay. Man, all this talk about pies is making me even more hungry than I usually am at this time of day.
I'm gonna have a nice wrinkled lunch.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a good old lunch after this. Wesley Thomas gives $2 Canadian and says the egg will hatch into Chizo, referring to the egg in Starstruck Vagabond. Well, I hate to open the mystery box too soon, but no, it won't.
Do it anyways. Oh,
fucking do it again.
Spicy.bp gives $2 and says Frost coming in with Ferrari rockers. Lol. See,
that was good.
See, I didn't pass it because I've always known how to pronounce Ferrero Rocher because they had that famous advert. Oh, Monsieur Ambassador, with this Ferrero Rocher, you are really spoiling us.
Yes. A perfect Irish accent and a perfect French accent in the same stream.
I thought you were implying that was the Irish accent.
Stop condescending to my terrible accents just because you've never left the country.
What? Hasn't Marty traveled?
I'm going to the Dominican Republic in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Come back tan.
Well, education gets in the way.
It doesn't count unless you leave the resort. Remember that.
I'm absolutely leaving the resort. I'm going to abandon my family very quickly.
Wow.
Jackson Jewell gives $5 and says, how do you feel about extra lore in games where there is a codex that you definitely do not need to read, e.g. Mass Effect, Dragon Age, etc.?
You know, say what you will. When Skyrim did that, because it's full of books and it's all lore and nonsense that you don't need, but one of them happens to actually go into a little side quest for you, that feels pretty good. I like that. Just like, yeah, you don't need any of this stuff, but if you want to.
Yeah. But for the sickos out there, enjoy this.
Well, thought everyone would like to enjoy Toffee, who's not in his usual spot. He decided to sit next to me out of shot. So I thought I'd better give everyone their toffee time.
Toffee time.
Toffee time.
Oh Christ! I jumped to the bottom again. Palash T gives $4.99 and says Asimov famously fucked up in the 70s by trying to connect Foundation trilogy to self-contained robot short stories. Contrivance does not make good lore.
If anything, it's the opposite, no? If it's just simple, quick, easy, boom.
Oh, that's what I keep saying. Like, just ditch this franchise after the third one and go back and just get back to basics. Just tell a nice, fun story that doesn't need lore, and then see where it goes.
If anything, the lore should be the simple thing in the middle of the entire story.
I mean, that's what Resident Evil 4 did. Resident Evil 4 works without any of the previous tangled, terrible Resident Evil series lore. It's just rescue the president's daughter from mad cultists. And that's why it worked so well.
As the 7.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, that's what got my interest. I never really cared for Resident Evil. I felt I couldn't catch up in time. But that one it was very Cloverfield, wasn't it? Very self-contained. Something else is happening elsewhere, but this is about this just right now. All
right. Chris LaHaye gives $2 and says, "Wasn't Lord of the Rings lore first? What was the first lore? Beowulf?
The Bible?
The Bible?"
Lore, you're allowed to make lore, do a lore first story if you fought in one of the 2 world wars. Instead, Tolkien fought in World War I. He's allowed.
Yes, there you go. And Ian Fleming is allowed to have all the lore he wants.
There you go.
Yep. It was in the wars.
Congrats, guys.
He was an intelligence officer.
That's fun.
So was Roald Dahl, incidentally. They were friends.
He was in the war?
Yeah, he was an intelligence officer.
Wow.
He had the job of seducing enemy wives.
Ah, there's a job.
There you go.
Gene Roddenberry was too. Now I want a movie about all these fucking authors and all these creators.
I think the closest you'll get is Operation Mincemeat.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who was creating stuff in the 60s, chances are they fought in World War II.
Yeah.
Because pretty much everyone did.
Just for the fuck of it. I missed the first one. I gotta be in this one, you know.
Yeah.
God, get me in the sequel.
Yeah.
SVS 2000 gives €5 and says, "Interesting that Yahtzee is getting back into Nine Souls when he didn't really like it on stream. I remember saying on stream that I'd need to put more time into it to fully appreciate it, and for some reason it keeps drawing me back. And I'm into it. I'm not sure what it is."
On stream, you said you were just stuck on that one boss.
Well, I've gotten past it now. I'm stuck on a different boss now.
Oh, that's good, as the cycle goes.
Yeah. Although, again, I'm feeling like if I just persevere and memorize the timing, then it's only a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
BS Marsh gives $5 and says, "The problem with lore and any genre property in all mediums from Angel to Zork is that they all get buried under the weight of their own mythology."
From Angel to Zork is a very good drop in that sentence.
Wow.
Yeah, ended after the third. Keep saying.
Surely you could have said Aardvark, though, no? The old comic that got really weird near the end. Am I the only one who knows it? Oh, Yahtzee.
I don't know.
Oh, that's Cerebus the Aardvark. It's called Cerebus.
Oh, it's Cerebus.
Dog? The 3-headed dog?
No, Cerebus, not Cerberus.
Nah, he was sort of a pioneer for comics, and then he got really weird in the end.
Yeah, that's something that got lost in its fucking lore, isn't it?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Dang. So you can end up burying yourself under your own mythology, I would say. I'm not saying that it is a fact, but Elden Ring kind of starting to feel that way to me. There's a lot going on there. I'm more curious about I don't know if you guys got into this. It was you go back to the hub in Elden Ring, and there's that girl there, and she was like, "Oh, there's weird whispering outside." I was more curious about that than whatever else was going on elsewhere.
I don't know where the fuck this place is. I thought it was like a pocket dimension.
Yeah, where the fuck are we? Where are we?
Alex Armstrong comes back with another $5 and says, "Yahtzee handled lore in his games and novels best by just making references that don't strictly connect, but are still there for fans. Dida especially." Yeah, I mean,
brave.
The main character of 5 Days a Stranger, Trilby the Cat Burglar, may or may not also be a character in The Consuming Shadow, and may or may not also be a character in the Deeda books.
There you go.
It's up to you if you want him to be. But
That's
if you don't want him to be, that's fine as well.
You really have to be careful, though, with lore. Because I guess it blurs that line between lore and Easter egg to it's like, this is for people with very specific knowledge. Like, Marty, I know you got through this episode. Do you remember the fork on the ground and the bear?
Yes.
Do you get that? Do you understand what that was?
Was it a reference to the dinner from last season, like the holiday dinner?
No. So here's the lore now, if you guys don't know. The rumor is when there's a Michelin critic in your restaurant, they put a fork down on the ground because they're testing your servers.
Yeah, and then I got to the episode where they're like, "Oh shit, someone from the
they've been here, and I'm here like, I don't know if people understand." I was like, "No way!" And my girlfriend was like, "What does that mean?" I was like, they're there right now."
Oh no, I didn't realize that.
But it does this to people like Yahtzee. See, like, he doesn't understand, so he's not as involved. You have to be careful with
about
your
fucking
lore.
Star Trek. We could talk about.
I'm awake.
But you have to be careful with the lore.
Everyone's seen Star Trek.
Everyone has not seen Star Trek.
Not the old ones. I saw the new ones with British name Cucumber Face.
Yeah.
Benedict, please abuse my surname. Yes. Who also plays Doctor Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Does. This is true.
He's Sherlock.
Yeah, he sure is.
He played Sherlock, but then many people have.
He's also really
good. Downey Jr.
Speaking of supporting the troops, he was also in those Netflix Roald Dahl adaptations of the 4 short stories. Done by Wes Anderson.
Yeah, he was
great. Henry Sugar.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. A stranded Rusalka gives £5 and says, "Get Frost to be the Vati for Starstruck Vagabond." Yachts gives the lore. Frost reads it in a video. Easy money right there.
See, it's not as organic. You need the culture.
Fun if I have to write down the lore.
Well, it turns out Vati's just Miyazaki.
Putting on an accent.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be very impressed by his ability to fake accents then.
Yeah,
that's very good.
Fox D gives $5 and says, "Bouncing around an established world is why 22 short films about Springfield was the best Simpsons episode."
It was a great episode.
Well, the steamed hams sketch is the best Simpsons episode. Everything else I could take or leave.
No, a lot of them are good. That one's probably the most iconic, obviously, especially in the last few years.
I was watching steamed hams edit just this morning, actually. Camja Ninja gives $10 and says, "Adding lore to Star Wars lost its mystique. The feeling of a fascinating glimpse of a strange, wondrous other world, but lore made the fantasy mundane. That's the trade-off of lore, grounding versus mystery."
I think that's a good point. It's funny, we're as we're going through Casey and I are going through the Devil May Cry games, we are enjoying DMC Devil May Cry, the Ninja Theory one, the most. And I think it's because its story and everything is just contained in that one text. Whereas with the other games, it's all like, oh, this is referencing this relationship from the old one. And oh, this is a callback to this. And since we're not super fans, we're like, we don't get this. Whereas the Ninja Theory one just feels like an easy to consume singular thing. So I feel like for novices, it is easier to enjoy.
I'm just remembering the one bit in DMC Devil May Cry where a mop falls onto the main character's head and he looks at himself in the mirror and then smirks and goes, "Nah," because that was the moment I wanted to punch the game in the face.
Oh, we thought that moment was great.
Ninja Theory. Hellblade,
yeah, they did DMC Devil May Cry. Them.
Yep, same guys.
That was the game they did before Hellblade.
Wow. Oh.
They either do all the gameplay or no gameplay at all. There's no middle ground.
There. Yeah.
No middle ground.
What happened there? Lovely.
Well, that was the last super chat.
We've solved nothing.
Well, it's with all great lore, it comes down to the community discussion.
I feel like the end of every one of our episodes is, what conclusion have we come to? It depends.
No, I think I'd like to dream that 20 years from now, some huge game comes through and they were like, "Oh, I got into this because I watched Windbreaker's podcast and all their questions really made me think on things. And now I made the most predatory gacha game you'd ever see."
Well, even if they don't acknowledge us, we can at least feel like we've planted seeds in their subconscious.
Yeah, I'm sporing right
they
now.
just listen. Well, you're boring.
Boring. Hey, I'm a fun guy.
Oh my God.
Well, on that note, before we start making any more puns, let's end the podcast. So I'm Yahtzee Croshaw. I do a weekly series called Fully Ramblematic that used to be called Zero Punctuation when we were at The Escapist. But it's basically the same thing. And this week I'm doing Crypt Master because I felt like I wanted to inject some positivity into the season.
I like it.
I've also got Yahtzee Tries this week, which I haven't decided what I'm going to be playing there, but I don't usually till the day. And I've got a semi-ramblematic coming out on Thursday as well. So that's my stuff.
Are you going to do a game about Bloods next week? It's only fair if you do a game about Crips this week.
Oh, no.
No.
That's a little Los Angeles gang humor for y'all.
That was a bad pun.
That wasn't even a pun. That was social commentary. That's what that was.
They've been united with Kendrick.
Thank you.
Are the Bloods and the Crips even a thing anymore? I remember them being a thing in like
this shows how nice of a neighborhood you live in.
I suppose.
Yeah.
I know how gritty it can get. I've watched clips of Breaking Bad when they go to Mexico.
The yellow filter?
How yellow it can get.
Yes, gets very fucking yellow sometimes. You guys plug your stuff.
All right. I'm going to plug Dimitri first, 2 Canadian. I was late, but take this $2 anyways. Thank you.
Oh,
as far as what I've made, go watch the newest Cold Take talking about those hard-working games journalists, and it's getting a little heated, brother. It's getting a little heated, but yeah, go ahead and give your thoughts on that. I say we roast them just like we roast each other with love, right? We need to take a step back from that. Marty, what are we doing here?
Wait, are you including us in?
We're not journalists. No, we're not journalists.
Well, we kind
the
of
three
are.
of us here. Oh yeah? When was the last time you reported a fact?
Well, you don't have to strictly report on facts to be a journalist. You just have to write. You just have to write for something called a journal. Sure. And one could say The Escapist was a journal.
Sure. They are dead in the water now. You tell me, last time you said a fact and I'll include you. I don't think you want to be included, Yachts. I'm just saying, if not for this video. You can be included in the next one.
I said Hellblade 2 sucked. Does that count?
That was hard hitting.
I still say all we do is write book reports about toys.
I say we're bloggers, toys.
Oh, little bloggers.
Professional bloggers.
I want to be a mommy blogger. That's what I want to be. I want to see what's going on with the mommies.
I'm a critic. That's got some cachet to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but I would argue that criticism is a form of journalism.
I think it's a sort of public self-flagellation, but that's the semantics. Marty, what do we do around here? What's next?
John Lee, thank you so much for joining or being a tip jar for 7 months. Yahtzee, acknowledge Lore from Star Trek. Is there a character named Lore? It was a capital L Lore.
Yes. There's a recurring villain character who's like Data's evil twin called Lore.
Oh, that's nerdy. There's a man named Data and there's a man named Lore.
Yeah, that was the joke, basically.
And Wesley Thomas for $2 Canadian. I have the last word. You've done it, Wesley Thomas. I'm proud of you. Later today, we will have Hidden Gems at the normal time, 6 p.m. tonight. I will be filling in for Jesse because Jesse is going to be on vacation. And Casey is going to be playing Indivisible, which is
that takes me back.
Action game from a couple years ago.
Yes, I remember that.
7 years ago.
I did a zero punctuation of it back in the day.
Were you pro or con?
In the end, con, I guess.
Good. And then we'll have most of the normal streams for the rest of the week. No Better with Friends tomorrow. Did you already say that?
Yeah, No Better with Friends. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
I forgot to plug the 1.1 update for Starstruck Vagabond is out, and it's a completely free update. It's got new content. It's got new outfits for characters, it's got new dialogues, it's got new missions, it's got new quality of life gameplay improvements, and the game is 20% off on the Steam Summer Sale, so you've got no excuse not to pick it up right damn now and give it a good review.
He's losing sleep now with this game for you guys. He was up at 3 in the morning slaving away. You know.
Yeah. I woke up at 1 in the morning this last night, and suddenly realizing, wait, did I remember to turn off debug controls in the last build I uploaded? And I ran to my laptop and realized I hadn't. So if you had a mysteriously easy time filling in the Nyaffle Planet exhibits at about 12 midnight last night, that would have been why.
See, Yahtzee Croshaw, a man who cares. Don't vote Labor. That's the sound off.
Okay. Yes, I care. Don't vote Trump either.
Please don't. Let's just all move to Canada.
I don't know.
Okay, I guess we're done now. This is the real last word. Fuck you, Wesley Thomas. Ha, bye.
Oh no, Wesley! Bye, everyone.